We see it all the time around college football where a new coach comes in and he's got so much to do these days. Put together a recruiting class at the same time as deal with a transfer portal, try to retain his own roster, figure out the lay of the land in a new state, a new conference, a new everything. And that's the deal with one Jonathan Smith at Michigan State. We're wrapping up National Signing Day here at the Voice of College Football. We've got Ryan O'Blennis on the line from Spartans Illustrated on Rivals to help us break it all down. Ryan, how you doing today?
I'm good. It's been a busy couple of weeks, couple of days.
Absolutely. So first off, I think the reviews across the country concerning Jonathan Smith's hire are through the roof. My reaction was certainly, wow, this is one of the better young coaches in college football. What he did at Oregon State was remarkable. Michigan State found a tremendous coach who shows that he can build a program and build it into a top 15 team in the country in back-to-back seasons. So we'll start there with your reaction to Jonathan Smith and his first few weeks on the job.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think it was an A+ hire. Like you said, he's a young coach. He's energized. He took over a 1-11 Oregon State program in his first year. Then now over his last 2 years, we went 18-7 there. It's, not an easy place to win. But he did a tremendous job building that program up because, he and his staff are elite talent evaluators and developers. And I think with the resources that he has at Michigan State, that should just continue. Obviously it's hard to predict now exactly what the future is going to look like under him, but he wants a blue collar program. He's going to get back to what Michigan State football, traditionally has been all about, I think. Toughness, physicality, like I said, that blue collar approach. He has a vision that he's clearly selling to these recruits, to the current roster. And he brought in a bunch of assistant coaches with him from Oregon State who he trusts. He brought in Joe Rossi from Minnesota as defensive coordinator. He retained Courtney Hawkins. There's still a couple of vacancies on the staff he needs to fill, but on paper, it's looking like a very strong staff, and he looks like a very good head coach. What he did at Oregon State was tremendous. So, the hope is that he's going to be able to get Michigan State back to prominence.
Yeah, just to make the comparison between this hire and the Mel Tucker hire, Mel Tucker had one season as a Power 5 coach. He went 5-7. Not that he couldn't have done really good things at Colorado and or Michigan State, had things worked out. He had the big first year, of course, or second year, I should say, with the 11-2 finish and the Peach Bowl victory. But things went sour, of course, off the field, and we're starting to be shaky on the field. Jonathan Smith, you got a guy, and I know, Ryan, in reviewing his program at the time at Oregon State when he took it over, we're not just talking about one win. We're talking about historically bad metrics, like one of the worst programs in modern college football history, just not competitive in any such way. Kind of lost up there in the Northwest, difficult recruiting situation, and just built a really good football team that is competing in up and coming conference, of course, up and coming at the time. Of course, the demise has come to the Pac-12, and now he heads out to the Big Ten and will be facing some familiar foes. What strikes me, Ryan, about this recruiting class is I counted 12 of these 18 commits. So first of all, it's a small class right now. We'll be asking you if this is going to get to be a larger class in numbers when we see 25 and 28 commits going to various schools across the country, but 18 commits. He brought in 12 of these guys since December hit. So he had to make a mad rush. He wasn't necessarily just retaining Mel Tucker's recruits. He went out there and grabbed a lot of guys.
Yeah, it was pretty remarkable. So 7 of them were previously committed, to the prior regime. And they were able to lock those guys in, show their vision, make sure they all knew that they were still priorities and they wanted them to be part of the class. So there's actually 19 commits right now, but 18 of them signed yesterday. And the one who hasn't yet is in-state linebacker Jaden Walker, who's pushing his decision to February because he's also being heavily pursued by USC now He took an official visit to Michigan State earlier this month, and then this past weekend he took his official visit to USC. And he told me that, he wants to take his time and he wants to get to know both staffs better before he makes his decision. And, he has that extra signing period, technically the regular signing period in February, even though most guys sign early these days. But he, I think the staff is still going to heavily pursue him, honor that commitment, try to get him in February. At the same time, they might look for other players as well. Smith said that now in the college football landscape these days, you got 365 days that you can add to your roster. So, they're never going to stop. They're going to keep looking at both high school recruits who are unsigned now, transfer portal additions, preferred walk-ons. I know they already got one preferred walk-on who was previously committed to, I believe, Kent State, who had, he walked away from a scholarship to have this opportunity to play for MSU. There's a couple other guys who they're going to bring in as preferred walk-ons as well. They got 5 guys right now who are transfers. They weren't officially announced yesterday, but, they all committed, and they're going to look to bring more transfers in with more visits in January and, headed. So they got plenty of time before, the summer hits to continue to build this roster. But yesterday was a very good start.
Absolutely. I see the second-rated player in the state of Michigan has signed, as well as, of course, Jonathan Smith using his Oregon State ties, in which he didn't necessarily just recruit on the West Coast. He recruited across the ocean to Hawaii to bring in 2 of the top players in the state of Hawaii, and they are near the top of the recruiting list in regards to the stars and the rankings. So just if you want to highlight some of the top players here and some of the guys that you like.
Yes, I think they brought in 8 guys who were priorly committed to Oregon State, previously committed to Oregon State. So, it was a big mix of this class was the guys who were already committed blended in with the guys who they already had established relationships with at Oregon State. I think there's 15 of the 19 commits fall into that group. And then, they were also able to flip Brady Pretzlaff from Minnesota. He decommitted shortly after he took an official visit to Michigan State earlier this month. And then he announced, that he was coming to MSU yesterday. That's a big in-state win right there. He says he likes to play with violence on the field. Great kid off the field. Really good ad as a linebacker there. They signed 2 quarterbacks. In addition to bringing Aiden Childs in from the transfer portal, who's going to be the projected starter in 2024. He just completed his freshman year at Oregon State under the staff and got some playing time behind DJU, and he, is expected to come in and be the starter this year. But Rylan Jesse signed yesterday, and that was a bit of a signing day surprise. He was committed to Utah State before that, but they had a relationship with him because they recruited him while he was at Oregon State. And when they were going after Tyler Cherry, who committed to Indiana, and I think after he committed to Indiana, they quickly pivoted to Jesse, and then the other quarterback that they're bringing in is Alessio Milivojevic, and I hope I'm not butchering his name because he spelled it phonetically for me, but this is a guy who was also previously committed elsewhere to Ball State, and he, everybody I've talked to about him, who's a talent evaluator, says that he can just flat out play. He was under recruited for whatever reason this past year at Illinois, playing in Illinois high school football. He had like 40 touchdowns and compared to 4 interceptions passing, and then he's also a threat to run the ball. He had like 9 rushing touchdowns as well. So I think they're very excited about him. That was a relationship that they were able to quickly develop, since they got here over the past 3 weeks. They got a lot of offensive linemen coming in. I think 5 offensive line commits. Several of those guys were previously committed at Oregon State. And then you got the Lenieski twins, who were already committed to Michigan State out of Ohio. Super athletic guys who have only been playing football for a couple of years, so they have really high potential. They've played a lot of different sports growing up. And the DB room is looking really strong. They brought in Coach Blue Adams to coach the secondary, and he quickly built bonds with a lot of those DB commits who were already committed to Michigan State. Justin Denson Jr., Jalen Thompson, Keyshawn Williams. And they're also were able to bring over Andrew Brinson, who was an OSU commit previously. So that's looking like a really strong group there. As you mentioned, you got two guys coming all the way from Hawaii, and Kike Burnett and Rustin Young. Burnett's a defensive end, and Young is an offensive lineman. So you got two running backs from Texas who were previous OSU commits, Mekhi Frazier and Brandon Tulis. Tulis will be an early enrollee. So will a lot of these guys, including both quarterbacks, Denson and Thompson as well, and Pretzloff and a couple others, I think. But yeah, so it's a really, for being able to get this group put together in 3 weeks time is incredible. They made sure to make Nick Marsh a huge priority, wide receiver, 4-star in state, one of the best receivers, not only in the state but in the country. And they also went in Ohio recently and got Austin Clay as a wide receiver, who's a kind of a speedy guy who can help with returns and could be a good playmaker after some development. But yeah, a lot of these guys that they're bringing in, Peyton Stewart, Raheem Johnson, Rustin Young, those three offensive linemen were all OSU commits previously too, so they had the established relationships with them and were able to get them on board. Wyatt Hook, tight end, was another Oregon State recruit who they commit, who they were able to get to East Lansing for an official visit. He's from California, and they got him locked in now too. So yeah, I mean, honestly, you look at the class and it's really impressive what they were able to do in 3 weeks. Obviously, that's not like a bunch of 4-stars, guys like that, but it's a really solid foundation, especially for how little time they had to recruit this class. And, with how impressive it is, I just think like, man, what are they going to do with the 2025 class when they have a year to recruit? They have, in addition to all the coaches, I think you got to give credit to guys behind the scenes in the recruiting personnel department, like Cole Moore and Michael Doctor, and the guys who stayed from the staff previously, who all, did a tremendous job. And Smith gave them all credit yesterday at his opening press conference, or signing day press conference.
Ryan O'Blennis joining us from Spartans Illustrated on the Rivals platform. Check out Ryan and the rest of the crew there at Rivals on SpartansIllustrated.com. Ryan, you made mention of Aiden Childs, of course, coming in from Oregon State. As you mentioned, again, 35 pass attempts, so he got his feet wet a little bit in relief of DJ Uiagalelei. He threw 4 touchdowns, no picks. So that obviously is a huge addition to the roster. As you mentioned, projected starter there. TJ Sheffield also stood out to me as a Big Ten player at Purdue, who was highly productive, 118 career receptions and 11 touchdowns. I believe the total is 5 transfers. Whether you want to speak to those guys or anybody else on that transfer list, who stands out to you?
Yeah, I mean, obviously we talked about Childs already, and he's probably going to be the biggest impact just because he plays the most important position at quarterback. And, I think fans are going to need to be patient when you got a transfer quarterback coming in who's only played 1 year of college football. There's going to be some growing pains, but at the same time, he already knows this offensive system under Smith, under offensive coordinator Brian Lindgren. So that's obviously a huge built-in advantage, and he has just a tremendous skill set, and one that Michigan State, he's very dynamic, and I can't think of another player at Michigan State for a while who's had that kind of skill set. You mentioned Sheffield. I think that was a really good kind of, you mentioned he had 118 receptions, which is very productive, but it still felt like kind of an under the radar pickup. But much needed for Michigan State in that wide receiver room. They lost, a few guys to the transfer portal. and graduation and whatever. And so, coming in, I think Sheffield should be able to carve out a pretty immediate role, as a starter or at least a heavy rotation player at wide receiver. He also has a lot of experience and the punt and kick return game. So really like that ad. Jack Velling, the tight end, very, very good ad as well. Also coming from Oregon State. So again, knows the system, knows the offense. He set the Oregon State single season record for touchdowns with 8 last year. I think maybe somebody said too, he had the most touchdowns in the country for a tight end in 2023. MSU lost Malik Carr to the transfer portal and Evan Morris. Morris was more of the blocking tight end and Carr more of the passing game, but I think Velling is going to be an immediate tight end one when he comes in here and make a huge impact. And, he already has some of that established chemistry with Childs. And then Jordan Turner from Wisconsin, Michigan native, huge kind of pickup there too, because he was an ultra productive linebacker at Wisconsin. He had like 135 career tackles, something like that. I think he was all Big Ten or all Big Ten honorable mention at one point during his career with the Badgers. He's another guy who can come in and make an instant impact on the defense. And I think, is really going to be one of the better pickups of this cycle. Maybe not only for MSU, but maybe for like several Big Ten teams. I think he's going to come in right away and do some good things. They also picked up a defensive end from Middle Tennessee State who committed yesterday, Quindarius Dunnigan. And I think that, some edge help, some pass rushing help is really needed. I think he had something like 10 tackles for loss this past year with Middle Tennessee State. So I think that he's definitely somebody else who you're going to, who I don't know if he'll be an immediate starter again, or just kind of be able to come in and rotate as a pass rusher and, set the edge and stuff like that. So, yeah, none of the guys were announced as official yesterday. I'm sure that's coming soon. I'm sure most of them are hoping to be enrolled in January and get started. But yeah, and they're going to continue to look to add more transfers to the roster. So good group so far.
Folks, if you've enjoyed the content, please hit the like button, subscribe right here at the Voice of College Football. Check out Ryan and the rest of the crew there at Spartans Illustrated. Ryan, we appreciate you stopping by, breaking down the class for us.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me, Mark.